you know what? Let's talk some weather. We are into the middle of June, and now we've got to deal with the rest of this growing season. And for people that are in the cattle industry, concerned about where grass is and the moisture and all the things that we're always concerned about in any given year. Joining us right now to discuss the weather forecast, it is Matt Makens of Makens Weather, based out of Denver, Colorado. How are we doing today, Matt?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, well, hey, it's great to chat with you. Okay, so I guess overall, so far, is the year shaping up to what we expected if you think back to some of our conversations from January?
The big picture, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a section of kind of southeastern Saskatchewan, southwestern Manitoba that really got a lot. I mean, they were soggy, right? That was a bit of a surprise, but overall, yeah, I think everything's on trend. We had talked about at CattleCon in February about kind of a rapid drying out from May into June, and I think for the most part that's on schedule. Maybe someone in central Alberta or Saskatchewan might say, "Hey, we're not yet," but
Yeah.
by and large, we're seeing that a faster dry out phase than what we had last year by a couple 3 weeks or so. But yeah, I think everything's generally on track.
Out in central and eastern Canada, I've heard from a lot of farmers, like in Ontario, they're like, "Man, it has been cool. It just doesn't feel like we've got off to that. It's not as warm as it should be." And I've been in Ontario this week, and I can attest. Like the other night, I was at a friend's place, and we had supper outside. It was nice. Then it got a little bit closer to, the sun dropped, and it kind of felt like Western Canada or being in Colorado where the temperature drops. It just doesn't feel warm yet.
Yeah, to me, I love that. I mean,
Yeah,
that's me.
yeah, I know, but
Above 65, I'm melting, okay? Uh, but yeah, it's been a generally cooler kind of start to the summer. And part of that is we've kind of caught a more active storm flow in parts of late April, May, and that's been cool. Drawn in some cooler temperatures too. And I know there's been some temperature struggles on getting some emergence and things like that and turning maybe some pasture has been a little slow to develop. But yeah, it's been cooler. But as we go throughout the summer, we'll probably see a delayed warmth into fall. So
okay.
spring, we kept the cool around a little bit longer, and fall will probably keep the heat around a little bit longer, just to balance everything out as nature likes to do.
Oh, beautiful falls are, I think they're the best. Like it's great for harvest. Okay, there's
Yep.
that. But it's college football starts. We just like it fall like a beautiful warm fall is just so optimal. Okay, so um, western half of the U.S.
Okay.
What's the moisture condition and how are people? What's the outlook? Dry bias.
We're really dry. The western U.S., especially the Southwest, the drought is just staggering. I mean, it hasn't shifted and it's just developing, building upon itself. We're getting a lot of record heat across the West. As you and I are talking today, it's
Yeah.
record temperatures across the West. And that trend likely continues. So June looks very dry and very hot for the Western U.S. We're already worried about wildfire dangers to the west because of this. Pasture conditions are not very good, um, with the exception of the Pacific Northwest. Their pastures are in decent shape. They had overall a decent winter, so they had a good start to the season, but they're going to see rapid drying over the next several weeks. So Western U.S., they're drought. That's what they're thinking is drought.
And locked in.
Pretty much locked in. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have a couple of weeks here and there with some monsoon. That's the thunderstorms that hit Arizona and New Mexico.
Yeah.
We'll get some of that, but it may not be enough or widespread enough to save the season or to eliminate the drought.
This week I was talking to some ag retails from the Midwest, and boy, some of that corn and soybean crop is off to a great start based on some of the things they told me. What are we expecting throughout the western and eastern part of the Corn Belt?
So central and western corn belt. So picture Iowa west. Okay.
Okay.
So well, basically just Nebraska and Iowa, but that general region. We're going to see likely to see rapid heating and rapid drying through late June into early July.
Mm.
And that's been it kind of works like a teeter-totter on a playground. If the southwestern US, Arizona, gets a lot of rainfall in July, so take your teeter-totter up, they're getting the rain.
Yep.
The other side of that teeter-totter is getting nothing, and that typically hits Iowa and Nebraska. So the pattern is not favorable going into pollination for frequent moisture. They'll get some water. The timing had better be spot on to the minute, as kind of that long-term frequency and heat is going to be more against going into pollination. So that's an area to watch out for. But go from, say, the eastern half of the Corn Belt, conditions are more favorable. They're going to have more frequent water. Their soil situation is better initially. So you're going to see kind of different headlines. But watch out for some talk out of Iowa, southern Minnesota, Nebraska, perhaps Kansas, right around late June, early July, and they're going to be talking probably about some drought and what their worries are going into pollination.
Oh man, we experience that's going to be disappointing, especially with the good start that we're off to, right? But we experienced this last year in Western Canada. Crop was off to a great start. It looks awesome, and then the heat turned up at the wrong time, and yields were disappointing. What about when you get into like Ohio and Michigan and those regions of the U.S.?
They're going to face some drier moments that might concern somebody at a moment, but by and large, they're in much better shape moisture-wise than central or west. So, if I were to say where would I be concerned most about drought on the crop, it's right on Iowa.
Oh, that's that's the
But I
heart.
mean,
That's the heart of the corn crop right there.
yeah, that's kind of the breadbasket, if you will. But
Yeah,
in the last several years, the hybrids they're growing,
yeah,
um, irrigation, all that stuff. A lot of times what the weather says, these hybrid, whatever these guys are geniuses are creating,
yeah,
that seed is like, I don't care about no drought. I'm going to give you lots of corn.
yeah.
So, I'm just speaking relative to what the weather conditions are like, not what the hybrids are possibly doing and those kinds of things. But
Yeah, well, and we try to kill the corn crop at least two or three times in a season. So we're just doing what we're expected to do.
yeah,
Central and Eastern Canada. We had
okay.
mentioned kind of off to a bit of a cooler start. But what's the outlook for that part of Canada?
So as we go through the next several months, temperatures are obviously going to start to warm up. But if you would look at a map and say Eastern Canada, Western Canada, just divide it in half,
Yeah.
Eastern Canada does stay more temperate, more a little closer to average. So your temperature anomalies would be more like a half a degree Celsius to a degree and a half Celsius over the next several months. Western Canada is going to be hotter than that. So with a more moderate start to the season, soil moistures are pretty decent there, and that's going to help curb some of the summer heating. So look for it. Yeah, it's going to be a warmer than average season, but not by huge staggering numbers.
Hmm.
And moisture wise, there's going to be some drier moments. And as we go through late summer, people are going to start to say, where's the water? And then we'll hit, August, September, October, and there's going to be kind of a band of moisture. And that will start basically, let's just say Great Lakes. And that band of water, that precip flow, will migrate northward as we go through the summer into the fall, migrate. So central Ontario and then northern Ontario as we progress. So there's going to be a moisture swing, kind of a tail that goes through that region. So again, it'll come down to timing, but at least you're not dealing with, oh my gosh, we're going to be staggeringly hot and maybe not enough water. At least the summer temperatures are going to help, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that we can swing that moisture through just at the perfect time for everybody.
Before we had this discussion, I was talking to one of our staff members that lives in northern Saskatchewan, and she said, "Please have Matt say it's going to rain. Is it going to rain on the prairies, Matt?"
We are getting rain, okay? For
But
Saskatchewan's sake, the southwest part of Saskatchewan is going to be the warmest and absolutely the driest through the summer. Uh, Everybody's going to be pretty warm. We do have some soil moisture surpluses in the east, the southeast mostly. That can help keep that area perhaps a little bit wetter, perhaps a little bit cooler. But, the probability for moisture in Saskatchewan is best in June. And then July and August, that chance drops off. So she's not in the driest part of Saskatchewan. You can tell her that. Okay.
You just mentioned some of the precipitation expectations for the Western Canadian prairies. What about temperature?
It's going to be, we'll ratchet that up as we get drier and drier. So, we just finished talking about how, northern Saskatchewan, dry, but not the driest part. It's more the southwest. And then you go into southeastern Alberta. That's another very dry pocket. So that dry pocket in the western prairies is going to be the hottest by several degrees Celsius, and then driest also. And then as we go through late June, July, August, early September, but that's going to be a turning point. We're going to see that heat and drought bubble kind of expand outward.
Mm.
So, very warmest would be anybody east of the mountains through Alberta and western Saskatchewan. Those will be the warmest. And those temperature anomalies, probably, you're going to say it's going to be a warm summer, but over the last 5 years, it's not going to be your hottest of the last 5 years. Your anomalies would be more like 1.5 to 3 Celsius on average over the next 3 to 4 months. Certainly the warmest part of the country,
Yeah.
but you've had some hotter summers here recently.
So it kind of feels like if I look at all of the geographies, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but it just feels like we're kind of same. What we've kind of been experiencing to different varying degrees. Is it not? It just
If
kind of feels what we've been sort of going through the past couple of years.
Right, yeah. If you take probably the last 5 years out, let's just average out 2020 through 2024.
Yeah.
Give me the average. That's likely what you're going to have for this year. So
Okay.
by and large, that's warmer than average. And by and large, that's drier than average for the prairies. A little different out in Ontario and Quebec, but
Yeah.
that has kind of been the rule of thumb. And we're just basically because of those 4 years, we've been kind of stuck in this La Nina thing and only one El Nino year. So we've only had one year where we've tried to flip the weather pattern. Overall, it is consistent over the last several years. You're right.